Alright, Math Compacted 7-8 class, we're going to talk about exponents and integers and their properties in Unit 6. Right here. Our objective for this first lesson is to know and apply the properties of integer exponents and to generate equivalent numerical expressions. So we're going to just kind of do that. Here's some practice. 3 to the third power is 3 times 3 times 3. An exponent is a way to represent repeated multiplication. Because that's really important, I'll say it again. An exponent is a way to represent repeated multiplication. So 3 to the third power means take this bottom part and multiply it together this many times, 3 times. Here we have the same thing. This is 3 times 3. This is 3 times nothing. So to the first power means just itself. Anything to the 0 power is actually 1. I will not talk about the reasons why that is, but you can see that the pattern makes sense when we continue this. Now let's talk about negative exponents for just a moment. Imagine that we have 3 to the negative 1. Well, what does that mean? This does not mean that there's going to be a negative number in our result. It actually means that that 3, which will represent as a 3 over 1, 3, is unhappy with its current state in life. That negative says that 3 is upstairs and it actually wants to go live in its parents' basement and play video games all day long. So we're going to say that negative right here, which is called the inverse operation. This is the multiplicative inverse. We are literally going to take the multiplicative inverse of 3. If you remember from talking about inverses, to invert multiplicative inverse is just the reciprocal. So we're going to take that 3 from the top and move it down to the bottom of the fraction where it's happy. So 3 to the negative 1 is in fact equal to 1 over 3. There is, note, no negative in the exponent. This is still to the 1 power if you want to raise that. This power doesn't change, but as a result of the fact that it was 1, we get itself, so 1/3. Once again, to summarize, negative exponents, this is where you're taking notes if you're taking notes right now. Negative exponents indicates the multiplicative inverse. Alright, so let's do 3 to the negative 1 is 1 over 3. 3 to the negative 2, let's first deal with the negative part of the exponent. This is 1 over 3 squared. The exponent becomes positive in the denominator. Let's go ahead and use a thinner pen so it's a little easier to see what's going on here. 1 over 3 squared. The squared did not go away. The squared is still there because that 2 didn't change. The negative means we want the multiplicative inverse, or often referred to as just the inverse. So we take the inverse of 3, it's still squared, so this is 1 over 9 when we get to that stage. And likewise with this, we're going to take the inverse first, and then deal with the additional exponent. This is 1 over 3 to the third, so this is 1 over 27. Filling out the rest of these, 1/3 is still 1/3. 3 to the 0 is still 1. And 3 to the 1 is still 3, 3 times 3 is 9, and 3 to the third is 27. Looking at the big picture here, there is a pattern. They're symmetrical, except for on the left side you have the original, you could look at this as an original number, where on the right side you have their multiplicative inverses. So the multiplicative inverse of 9 is 1/9. The multiplicative inverse of 27 is 1/27. So that's what that negative in the exponent means, is we're going to do the multiplicative inverse, which totally makes sense. In addition land, the inverse of 3 is negative 3. This means inverse in addition land. In multiplication land, inverses are reciprocals. So since exponents are repeated multiplication, the inverse of repeated multiplication is repeated division. Thus the multiplicative inverse is indicated by a negative exponent. Then you have some practice here. I'm actually going to do this practice for you so that you can take a look at how this works. Firstly, with exponents, we'll read the instructions here. Simplify the following expressions by expanding the expression into what it means for multiplication. So, expression with exponents. Our first expression is 2 to the 5th power. for exponential multiplication, that means 2 times itself 5 times. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. You too? To simplify this down, we're just going to multiply it out. This is, you could look at it as 4 times 4 times 2, or 16 times 2, or just 32. Now we're going to do this guy. This says the stuff in parentheses is going to be multiplied by itself 4 times. So this is negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4. To get an idea, this is negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16, and negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16, and 16 times itself is 256. So there we go. Once again, this means negative 5 times itself 3 times. So we have negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5. Negative 5 times negative 5 is positive 25 times negative 5 again is a ginormous sneeze worth 125. It's also negative because sneezes hurt. And when you multiply 3 negatives together, your result will be negative as well. This guy means 4 inverted and squared. So firstly, we're going to take the inverse of 4, which the multiplicative inverse, which is 1/4. Then we're going to square it, which is 1/4 times 1/4, or you can look at it as 1 over 4 squared. 1 over 4 times 4, you can look at it kind of like that, which means we're looking at 1 over 16. All right, I'm going to go a little bit faster now that we have the basic principles in practice. So we have 3 to the negative 3. That means we're going to invert 3 and multiply it by itself 3 times, which is 1 over 27. 10 to the 0. Hey, yo, class, let's have some fun. If you raise it to the 0, then the answer is 1. Cool. All right, once again, we're raising something to the 0, so based on the wrap I just said, this is actually going to be 1. No sweat. This one's a little more fun. We have negative 4 cubed. Cubed means to the 3rd power, and inverted. So this is 1 over negative 4 times itself 3 times. And 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. Since there's 3 negatives, that is a negative 64. So we have negative 1 over 64, or 1 over negative 64. However you'd like to write that. The way I wrote it is in most simple form. 8 to the negative 1 is simply 1 over 8. That's it. 1 over 8 to the 1. To the 1 note stops working. That sounds fun. Welcome to normal class here. All right. Oh, the tragedy. I'll redo that really quick. Okay, that's been redone. It is important to recognize that negative is not a negative sign. That means opposite or inverse. So we're doing the inverse of multiplication, which is division, or the inverse of multiplication. Okay, this problem set I will leave for you to do on your own, and we will conclude the first video here, properties of integer exponents.